He wants to be worshipped. And God says, don't use pagan, heathen customs to celebrate, to worship me. Yet, people reason the exact opposite. God says, don't do this, yet here we are doing it. Don't worship me with paganism, and here we are worshiping God with paganism. Don't you find that interesting? How people reason the way God says, don't reason? Now, if you look at a lot of other these Christmas symbols, like mistletoe, mistletoe was a sacred plant in the religions of the Druids in Britain. It says that in this source, it says it believes to have all sorts of miraculous qualities, such as power of healing diseases, making poisons harmless, giving fertility to humans and animals, protecting from witchcraft, banning evil spirits, and so on. And in fact, it was considered to be sacred. And the Druids, of course, it was a fruit for fertility, and that's why you see people kissing underneath the mistletoe. It was the first act of kissing is, of course, the first act of lovemaking. What about the holly wreath? The holly wreath, of course, is a symbol of the pagan sun god, and people put the holly wreath in their doors at Christmas time. And, of course, the holly wreath is, of course, the symbol of the sun god. Yet we do it every single year. And how about the Yule log? The Yule log, Hislop says, the Yule log is the palm tree denoting the pagan Messiah as Baal Tamar, the fir referring to him as Baal Berith, the mother of Adonis, the sun god. And, of course, the sun god is Nimrod. And this is what the Yule log stands for. And what about Santa Claus? Santa Claus is none other than Nimrod himself as well. In his book, Is Christmas Christian, by Sheldon Emery, it says here, a long flowing white beard, the dress, the reindeer, the fir tree, and the wings giving power to fly through the air. In the drawing of Nimrod, the similarity to Santa Claus can be seen. So even the festival of Christmas, of the hustle and bustle of the Christmas shopping and so on, history shows that early Christians avoided the ancient custom of holiday gift-giving because it was reminiscent of the Roman Saturnalia. Early Christians knew where this came from. The interchanging of gifts between friends is, of course, from the Saturnalia, it says here. And it says it must have been adopted by the Christians from the pagans, and, of course, Tertullian admits this. So, the hustle and bustle of Christmas time, of shopping and gift-giving and so on, all comes from that festival called the Saturnalia, or the Festival of Solstice Invictus, or the Sun God. So this is what I was going through at the time when I found out that the early Christian church didn't celebrate Christmas. And I wondered why. And I started researching and researching. And now I know why. They never celebrated Christmas. They didn't put up Christmas trees. They didn't give each other gifts. When you look at the Gospels, when the wise men gave Christ the gifts, they didn't give gifts to each other. They gave it to the Christ child. They gave gifts to Christ, not to each other. But they didn't perpetuate the gift-giving from that part of the story. Gift-giving comes from the pagan festival of Solstice Invictus. Has nothing to do with Christ. And when we come back, I'm going to show you a couple of sources that show that Christmas was banned in North America. Let's go to commercial break, and we'll be back with more on British Israel Radio.
You need. You've blown it, made a mess of life, and deep inside you wonder if anyone could love you the way you are. God does. And that's why God let his only son, Jesus Christ, die on a cross almost 2,000 years ago. Jesus died for you because God knew you would fail to measure up. That's how much God loves you. The Bible, God's book, says, while you were a sinner, a person who failed and missed God's standards, Jesus died for you. But that's not all. God also raised Jesus from the dead. And because Jesus lives forever, you can too. If you want unconditional love and a new start on life, call 888-NEED-HIM. Let me repeat that. If you would like to speak to someone right now about beginning a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, call 1-888-NEED-HIM. Someone is ready to help you. Call 888-NEED-HIM.
All right, we're back here on British Israel Radio, the nation's identity station. My name is Peter Salemi, pastor and president of the British Israel Church of God. Glad you could join us today on our live radio broadcast, talking to you about the Mass of Christ, or Christmas, and how Christmas has nothing to do with Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Christ wasn't even born on December 25th, believe it or not. That date is not in the Bible. And that it actually came from paganism and the ancient festival of the Solstice Invictus, the Saturnalia. There's many names to it, but it goes all the way back to Babylon and the worship of Nimrod and his mother wife. They had the first empire, and one of those cities of his empire was Babel, as we read in Genesis the 10th chapter. And then, interesting, in Genesis 11, we find that the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. This is the whole earth. And then they wanted to make a brick and, of course, make a tower. And Nimrod was in charge of all of this. This was his first city that he built of his empire. So then God came down, and he confounded their language, that they might not understand one another's speech, in verse 7. And so the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Eternal did there confound their language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. And from there we see the Babylonian mystery religion being spread all over the earth. And we find all these ancient pagan customs going back to the Babylonian religion. You can trace every pagan religion back to Babylon. The worship of the mother-son image of Madonna and child. You don't just find that in the Catholic Church. You find that in ancient pagan religions. And the Christian Church adopted those kind of images. Now, believe it or not, in America, even in England, the Puritans, when they came to political power in England, they immediately tried to outlaw Christmas in 1642. And in America, Christmas was banned as well. It says Christmas was not established as a legal holiday throughout the U.S. until late 19th century. In 1659, the Puritan colony in Massachusetts passed a law that anyone found observing such a day as Christmas shall be fined 5 shillings. That's from the Phoenix Gazette, December the 22nd, 1976. Christmas was banned in America. Not anymore. I think it's the busiest shopping day in the States. Then comes Thanksgiving. America and England tried to outlaw Christmas. The Puritans tried to do it in England. They did it here in America. Of course, it didn't last too long because people love Christmas. They think it's Christian, but it's got nothing to do with Christ or the Bible.